Well, welcome everybody to the Rice Report and our interview series. Today we are joined by Josh Bernstein, a tremendously interesting guy who's had a very long, winding road. A lot of the personalities that are out there right now have come from the era like myself. I had no interest in doing social media, podcasting, nothing until after the 2020 election. Josh has been in this fight for a very long time. One of the more censored guys on the internet, an investigative journalist. He's had multiple shows. He's been censored more than most people you'll ever encounter. And he's recently come out with a new book called Preserving Liberty, which each and every one of you should order on Amazon. Super interesting topics that we're going to cover today. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
It's great to be on the program with you.
Well, there's so much I can cover with you. And the best part is, one of the best parts about podcasts, which makes it different than the news, is that you always try to get people who have different opinions, and we all have different opinions. We all see the world in a different way. You have actually been doing this for much longer than most people. You could look at, most of the big podcasters today, they kind of started, everything kind of began 2020, 2021. Big movement in 2014, which was a huge year in human history. I don't think people realize how many global events took place or what those events actually mean. I'm going to do a podcast on that later in the month, in February. And 2014, big year. 1871, big year. We've had a lot of big years in history that aren't covered in school. But Josh, you have been in this a long time, going against the left-wing trends, right? We find ourselves in America that isn't recognizable as America. Maybe on Monday, we're filming this on January 18th right now, so we're 2 days away from inauguration date of Donald Trump. And of course, that's a main topic we're going to cover, as well as the next 4 years. I think it's always important. I love talking about the past. I'm a historian by nature. I love it. But I listen to podcasts myself to figure out what other people are thinking about the future. And I think that's a topic we're going to run into. So Josh, give us a quick rundown of your history, the censorship, YouTube, getting kicked off everywhere, demonetized. Give us a quick rundown of that, because I try to spotlight that every time. I've been through this myself, nowhere near to the extent you do, but I'm also not a media personality. So you have these ideas in 2017 that are not mainstream, right? You're not bending a knee to the mainstream narrative. And then
no, I've never done that. I've never done that, actually. But, it's interesting that you brought up 2014, because around 2012 is when I actually started my career in media. I was a writer for Washington Times, Breitbart, Tea Party Tribune at the time. That was just kind of starting. And of course, 2014 is when the Tea Party, explosion pretty much took place. That's where we got Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio came from that class, and a bunch of others, Scott Brown, I believe, in New Hampshire. There was quite a few of them. And as a matter of fact, I think the only ones left are Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Ted Cruz ended up remaining a conservative. Marco Rubio kind of went over to the establishment. But I will say, I just saw his nomination hearing, and he was phenomenal. So we could talk about that later. But
they all were, actually. All of them did a great job.
Yeah, they really did. And we can talk about all that. But it really just started for me when about 2017, when YouTube changed the algorithms and they started censoring during President Trump's first term. And what happened is they first demonetized me for speaking too much truth. And they figured, well, if we just take away his incentive to continue to do videos, well, he'll just go away with those videos. But of course, that didn't happen. I actually was demonetized, and then I used that to then draw people to Patreon so that I can continue to monetize my work. And eventually what ended up happening was about 2 weeks before the election, I was in discussion with a gentleman from a security company out of Texas, Russell Ramsland, and we were going over and we were talking about the 2018 Kentucky governor's race with Matt Bevin and Andy Beshear. And we were showing live on CNN that they were taking votes away from Matt Bevin in a split second and giving them to Andy Beshear. And I was slowing down the video and circling it and kind of slowing it down. And from that, it had about 900,000 views on it in like less than 2 days. And from that, I lost both my YouTube channels. And then a few days after that, that's when James O'Keefe, great guy, he's been on my show before. That's when he came out with his, what we call Little Mogadishu, but the St. Paul, Minnesota area of Somalia, the largest Somalia population in the entire world, by the way, outside of the country of Somalia. And they were doing ballot harvesting in the election. And in particular, Ilhan Omar, or her real name, Ilhan Noor Saeed Omi, but Ilhan Omar's chief of staff was running it. And so they took about a 40-minute video and they cut it down to 24 seconds. And from that video, I exposed who she was, where she came from, how she lied on her N-400 immigration form, saying that she was never part of an authoritarian or totalitarian regime. Of course, that was not true. Her father, Muhammad Nuar, was the former dictatorship, Saeed Bayar's dictatorship's propaganda minister. So if they didn't leave Mogadishu, they would have been killed, because that regime was being overthrown by another regime. So they had to leave. And so they lied, and they said that they came here for a better life and that they were peaceful and this and that. So I kind of exposed all that. I exposed the fact that, who she was, her family, the ties to terrorism, the ties to CARE, the ties to this and that. And so from that, I ended up losing all of my platforms. I was on Amazon Prime, had a Roku television show, Twitter, Facebook, all of it, every single one, even LinkedIn. I didn't even get my LinkedIn account back until maybe about a month and a half ago. So here I am fighting back. We are now going to be hopefully in a new age, a golden age of no censorship. Brendan Carr is going to be the FCC chairman. He's come out hot, said that he's going to try to force these social media companies to basically stop their algorithms and stop their censorship. So I am cautiously optimistic that if he ends up doing that, who knows, maybe I'll get back my 2 YouTube channels and a lot of my other accounts, and it'll be like I never left. But I've been for 4 years, I've been in political purgatory. Basically, I had to rebuild my entire career. I'm still censored to these days, but people can go to jbushow.com, which stands for Josh Bernstein Uncensored.com. And you can check me out there. You can find my show that I do 7 days a week. And of course, I wrote this book in particular to get around the censorship, because they usually can't go after books. And you can get this on Amazon. Congressman Paul Gosar did the foreword to it, and it's been endorsed by not 1, but 2 New York Times bestsellers, Alan Dershowitz for its accuracy and constitutionality, and of course, my good buddy Roger Stone for its savagery. So definitely check it out. You can get it on Amazon. Just put in Preserving Liberty book, and you'll find my ugly mug staring back at you, pointing at you. So
Accurate savagery. That's the best pitch for that book. I love that.
Yep.
So a couple things. Number one, you should never, ever deny the background story. The origin story of all of our famous people and politicians is exactly as they tell us, right? So the Ilhan Omar story is repeated throughout history. Every time a nation kicks out communists or dictators, they all flee to the United States. We've been so welcoming to these personalities and these genres of people that believe in dictatorial governments, that believe in these ideas that are un-American. And then we put them in positions of power. We give them platforms, and they've been able to brainwash an entire nation for the better part of 50 years. So I am extremely excited. And again, we'll all have different views on people, political views, all these things. That's actually the beauty of America. So I hope you get your voice back. I hope you get exactly what you're looking for. But most importantly, I think, I'm a believer in God. So God pushes people in the right direction. He moves things that always seem to be like, I prayed for this and I didn't get it. Well, it's probably a good reason. Or I prayed for this and it came in a different way. I think what we're watching right now is the decentralization of power when it comes to the town square. We've all become so reliant on these big platforms, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, the whole 9 yards. We're so dependent. What we don't realize in America is that everyone can do what you're doing. You get your own server, you get your own website, nobody can censor you. The smart guys are doing that. So I applaud you for doing that. It's expensive. It's time consuming.
Very expensive.
Very expensive.
99% of all of my costs pretty much go to security. I give you an idea. I have 14 levels of security on my website. 14 levels. I've got tripwires in my servers and all that good stuff. But the sad reality is that for me to speak freely in the United States of America, right? Home of the free, all that, I have to rely on a full 365, 24/7, 7-day-a-week security team and apparatus in another country, which is insane when you think about it.
It's completely un-American.
It's completely un-American.
And the only reason you have to have somebody outside the country is because it's, well, 2 reasons. It's cheaper, And most of the time, they don't have to bend the knee to the powers that be here in this country. I think that was very evident with Parler when Parler moved over, and then eventually they couldn't shut down Parler itself, but they found out they were hosting on Amazon, and Amazon shut them down.
Correct.
You know, we're entering, this is such a good conversation to have because we're entering into this theoretical golden age. I believe that'll happen. I believe in Trump, but I'm always after what we've all been through here, we should all be critical thinkers. We should be very cautious, and we should be very questioning of power forever. Just because someone's in doesn't mean they're going to do things that we disapprove of or they're un-American, intentional or not. But I think that this new era that we're going into right now needs bravery. It needs courage. It needs people who actually do thorough research. So almost all of our entire class of true investigative journalists were completely kicked offline from 2018 to 2022, basically. And then Rumble kind of kicked up, and BitChute's always been uncensored, but it's a very low traffic website. What do you envision moving forward? Like, what is your absolute hope of, and no one should forget this period in time. And I believe this, Josh, I've been saying this on my show for a long time. We're going through this so our kids don't. Like, that's really the important part. So what do you envision with Trump in office?
That's a good assessment. Well, look, I think things are going to be a lot different. The sad reality is that because we're such a polarized country and the margins are so tight, that basically we are governed by executive fiat, and whether that's Republican or Democrat, right? I mean, so President Trump comes in 2016, does executive orders, changes a lot of things. We start getting onto the right path. Of course, we had the stolen election in 2020. And what happened from there? They reversed all of the gains that President Trump was able to do. So what's President Trump going to do next? He's going to come in on day one. He's going to do 100 executive orders. He's going to undo the damage of the last 4 years. What we have to do is we have to get to a point where we do not rely on executive action in order to facilitate fixing certain things in the country, which means we've got to get to a point where we can actually pass permanent legislation, which is why I call the book And Create Permanent Freedom, because it's not about the executive orders and things like that. Yes, they're helpful, but they were never supposed to be used for the purpose of governing. They were supposed to be for, you know, naming a post office in Kalispell, Montana, or, you know, whatever it might be. It was never supposed to be for actual, you know, legislation or things like that. And so we've got to get away from that. But sadly, they're needed because of all the damage that has been done in the last 4 years. And so it's a catch-22. You don't want to continue to use these temporary fixes that can be reversed, but you need those temporary fixes until you can get to a point in which you can introduce legislation that can be permanent and get the votes for it and pass it, so we don't continue this vicious cycle of an artificial fix every 4 years. But, you know, we'll have to see what happens. I mean, I say this a lot, you know, tyranny is sold as convenience.
100%.
That is what we find ourselves in this century. You know, the last century, tyranny was gotten at the barrel of a gun. In this century, it's voluntary, right? It's our cell phones, it's social media, things like that. We're giving away our information. And so we have to be cognizant of that, but also we also have to be able to fight back against it. And again, a lot of these companies, a lot of these social media companies, you know, they are not supposed to be able to be the arbiters of truth. Right. Even Mark Zuckerberg is kissing the ring and he's saying that he's changed. Of course, I don't believe him. He's an opportunist that stole his own company. Let's face it, many years ago. But the reality is that
that's a longer story than that.
It's a much longer story, but I'll
Life
wrap
log.
up my
Remember
answer
Life
real
log.
quick. So what happens is we have to understand that tyranny is sold as convenience.
Always.
And we have to continue to fight back against these big tech oligarchs. And I think with Brandon Carr coming in as FCC chairman, he's come in hot, and he said that he's going to change the social media algorithms and force them, if he has to litigate against them, whatever he's got to do to stop the censorship. So I am cautiously optimistic that I might be able to get back to where I was 4 years ago, but time will tell.
Well, hopefully we'll get some folks over to here with this interview, you know, today, some book orders too. Get everyone's opinion should be heard. That's absolutely everyone's. That's the beauty of America. I'm going to rewind a little bit. That just kind of kicked into my head. You were talking about the Bashir election in 2018 and vote flipping.
That's correct.
I think the mere fact that you were censored at that point, I mean, let's be honest, like 98% of the country, 100% of the country outside of Kentucky in 2018 didn't care about that election, right? 100%. Nobody was paying attention. No one cared. But it was a precursor because that happened in the presidential election in 2020. So they certainly couldn't have you out 2 years in advance with a very popular video alerting the world that they
Right.
flipped votes, right?
And that happened in 2018. That was in a
Yeah.
midterm.
Yeah.
And you're right. Why would anyone care about a governor's race in Kentucky? I didn't certainly care about a governor's race in Kentucky. But when I saw what they were doing, and I saw that they were able to flip these votes in a split second live on television, and to know that all these votes were being counted outside of the United States, outside of the county, outside of the state, and they were being counted in other countries, and they were used by companies like Seidel and Smartmatic and SGO and Dominion and all the rest of them. I said to myself, my goodness, are they going to do this 2 weeks? This was 2 weeks before the election that I was doing this interview. Are they going to do this in 2 weeks? And of course, the person I was talking to said, yeah, there's no question they're going to do it. We've told the Trump campaign, we've told as many people as we can, but they don't seem to be taking much of an initiative to try to stop it. And, the sad reality is that what we saw in 2020 was the complete blocking from the courts of taking any of these election fraud cases, right? Well, in 2024, the RNC got smart and they realized that judges don't like to take these types of cases once even one vote has been cast. So what did they do? They were proactive rather than reactive. And they filed 128 lawsuits, including 87 or so in the 7 swing states. And so when they saw shenanigans, when they saw, for instance, Jocelyn Benson in Michigan saying, don't worry about having the signature match the ballot, or don't worry about having the envelope and the ballot together. We can still just assume that that's what the signature meant. And we said, no, I don't think so. And so there was a lot of those types of lawsuits in Pennsylvania and Arizona and Michigan, Wisconsin, and all over the place. And they were able to be stopped because the judges were able to intervene and say, okay, no votes have been counted yet. Now we're going to jump in and now we're going to stop the shenanigans. And thank God that they were proactive, because there were so many lawsuits in which they did try to cheat that thankfully the courts realized it and favored the RNC, and they had to stop. And so that was the one reason why we won the election. But we cannot discount the fact that Turning Point, Charlie Kirk, and of course Scott Pressler, Early Vote Action, and my good buddy Cliff Maloney from Pennsylvania Chase. I mean, those 3 organizations in particular, the strength of those 3 organizations in Pennsylvania flipped Pennsylvania, which helped President Trump win the election. So there was a lot of great people, activists, and heroes that deserve a lot of accolades for President Trump's victory.
Yeah, I had Joe Hoff on here before the election talking about all those lawsuits and the way that was being filed and privately funded. I mean, the reality of America. Yes, he is. Yeah. One of the things about America that's fascinating to me is that, we have this movement in the country, Ilhan Omar, one of the leading the charge there, of this capitalism is bad. Well, if capitalism was so bad, why do you have a nice home? Why are you living here? Right? Like these are important things, but capitalism is the only thing that saved this country. Privately funded lawsuits, privately funded attorneys. These are donation based. I think all of America deserves a big applause for waking up in 4 years and making big changes. But we have so many changes to make moving forward. It's unbelievable. We need to focus on this country first. We are funding way too many foreign wars, foreign objectives, foreign adversaries in many instances. So let's get into 2024. Let's get into 2025. 2025 is important. So obviously we're going to see Barr make some changes on the communications in this country. What areas are you seeing? Because you've got certain contacts, and a lot of people we don't. I like having people on here and getting their views and opinions based on what you're hearing. So what are you hearing about the 100? Have you heard anything about the 100 executive orders and what might be in them?
Well, a lot of them are obviously immigration
and energy
executive orders for the most part. Just a lot of things that are happening. Stephen Miller, God bless him. He's such a patriot. He's such a great guy. I wish he would have been a little quieter before the election, to be quite honest. Why telepath to your enemies what you're planning on doing? I would, if I was running that campaign, I would have had every single cabinet member locked down and have them sign an agreement, a signature affidavit that they were not going to speak about what was going to happen and what they were planning on doing. And when they got questions about what will you be doing here and here, just say, you know what, we'll have to talk about that after the inauguration. In other words, just not say a word as to what is happening. But clearly, I think that we're going to enter into a new phase. I think that these executive orders are going to come fast and hard, and they're going to come quick. They've already announced that Chicago is going to be the first city that ICE is going to go in and do raids to get a lot of these gang members and criminal illegal aliens out of the country. I believe that will be followed by many other states and big cities as well. And these states that think that they can, quote, Trump-proof the economy or whatever it is that they think they can do with Gruesome Newsom over there, the Ted Bundy of politicians, as I like to call him. I don't think that's going to work because, again, they can be arrested, number one. And number two, they're gonna understand that they need these people out of their communities too. They may want to say that to kind of maybe curry favor with the illegal aliens that continuously vote for Democrats, but in the end, they're going to have to succumb to Holman and ICE and the rest of them, and they will win that battle, and these people will be removed from the country. So I think that's going to be your number one take, and then I think energy is going to be right after that. I think energy is going to be really important. I think you're going to see executive orders for the Keystone Pipeline, of course. That will be great. You're going to also see the opening once again of ANWR, the Alaskan National Wildlife Refuge. And I think we're going to be on the road eventually back to energy independence. And I think once you get the energy costs down, then everything else is going to kind of fall into place, because everything starts with energy, right? And once the energy is down, the rents come down, the mortgage comes down, inflation comes down, all these different things come down. And then, of course, health and human services. I think we're going to improve our food supply, our water supply. I think we're going to get rid of the bad, terrible seed oils and things like that. Buffalo Wild Wings now uses beef tallow. Shake and Steak is a brand new announcement saying that they're going to the beef tallow and things like that. And so I think what's going to happen is our healthier way of living is going to come back. I mean, look, you can go to Europe or other countries around the world and eat their food, and it is so much more healthier than the food they serve here in the United States of America, without all the pesticides and GMOs and all that other stuff. And I'm not necessarily a quote unquote, granola crunchy person or anything by that stretch, but I am excited to know that they're going to take the food supply, seriously. And I think that's going to be really, really good.
We have to. Yeah, it's all a vicious lobbying cycle where your lobbyists are teaming up, pooled capital. You have big pharma pooling with big food, which is pretty easy to trace and say, well, if you make them sick, I'll fix them and we'll all make money. That whole process. But
there's
I think
no
you're
money
right
in cures. There's only money in treatments. That's
right. That's right. And one of the things about energy that I hope he passes day one is the building of 3 to 4 refineries. That's really the problem. Yeah. I came from oil and gas, so I talk about this quite a bit. Americans don't realize that we drill for a different type of oil than we refine. So when we drill oil here, we have to ship it overseas because their refineries are capable of refining our oil. That's how globalism was created. It started with energy. So there were pacts created between the Middle East and America. Rockefeller made his pact where he would have a higher premium on his oil by having foreign refineries. So we would buy their oil, create refineries for it, and then ship our oil over there. And you have cross-border globalism built in. That is going to cost us almost $100 trillion to get $100 billion to get the effective rate of refinery. So one thing economically, I think everyone should be, this is what I cover on my show most of the time, Josh. Everyone should be prepared for major money printing. I know everyone thinks that will come to an end, but it just simply can't. When you have 36 trillion in debt and probably 30 trillion of that has either been money laundered, stolen, sent to foreign countries. And now we have all these problems. We have Western North Carolina still has no power. People are dying, freezing to death in tents.
Oh, it's so horrific. I mean, we need to make sure that we get money to those folks right away on day one. And California, here's the thing with California. I think we take care of Western North Carolina. We bring those people whole. These are the people that are suffering out in the cold, just as you pointed to. These people in California, if you want money, if you want President Trump to come in and help out and give you guys what you need to get back to Los Angeles is the way that it used to be, well, then you're going to have to make sure that Gavin Newsom resigns,
Yep.
Karen Bass resigns, and anyone that had anything to do with making sure that the fire hydrants run dry, they all have to resign too. And so what needs to happen is a pressure campaign from the people of California. President Trump ought to announce on Truth that he's there for California. He wants to help them rebuild, but we want to rebuild the right way. We're not interested in smart cities. We're not interested in California central governing authorities controlling everybody and rebuilding the way that they want to rebuild. The bottom line is, at least at this point, they're not going to rebuild California the way people think they will. And
Right.
so I think he has a lot of leverage here where he could basically tell the people of California, if you want assistance, if you want help, if you want funds, if you want aid and donations and all that, then you have to get rid of the people that caused the problem to begin with first, and then we'll put an aid package together for California. But until they do that, why would you give them tons and tons of money to rebuild when they're just going to pocket it or give it to their globalist buddies or the CCP or whoever it is that they want to give it to? So that's what I would propose for President Trump.
Well, it brings up another interesting topic that needs to change in this country is federal funding to state, right? So we have U.S. citizens that belong to a state. So when they have a problem in that state, the first thing that happens is the state itself requests money from the federal government. The federal government approves or denies, mostly approves, sends it to the state officials who caused the problem. And then 10 years later, the problem still isn't solved. You can look at, I lived in California for years, in LA. So you have the high-speed train that never existed. That was like $9 billion. Another $1.9 billion was used in Manhattan Beach, Venice Beach area for homelessness that now houses 20 homeless. I can build a facility right now for a couple $1 million that'll house 20 people, right? Like, it's not difficult. All that money goes to consultants, to engineers, to architects that never actually work on these projects. So one of the things, I think one of the big changes we're going to see here is going to be blockchain innovation in voting. Blockchain innovation and consensus, having bills judged, not now, we're looking years down the road, but as education steps up in that area, and then also direct funding. So I think we need to go into that where if, I live there, so I have much sympathy for the people of Los Angeles. There are people who do not, right? They just believe everyone in Los Angeles is some lost lefty bending a knee to Hollywood. It's not true.
Right.
But Pacific Palisades is very much a family place. Yes, it's expensive, but not every person in this world made their money incorrectly. Many people have made honest money and they've done very well for themselves. And I think we should be praying for them all. God tells us to pray for our enemies, right? So even if you don't like California, and I'm not a huge fan, I left there to Texas for a million reasons. Never wanted to be there. I went there for work and a change of life. But I think that if we start getting into this direct funding, where instead of us having to siphon money from the government to a state, and hopefully the state allocates to the right people, where people can apply for federal government funding directly. Because I know if somebody caused a fire in my home and my home burned down and I didn't have insurance, which many of these people don't, I would be looking for help. And right now you have scalpers looking at the land. The only thing Newsom's done that actually is fairly beneficial is keep the scalpers away from buying these properties cheap, but it also kind of goes against free market.
Well, I was going to say, for now, he's doing that.
3
Look,
weeks.
these
3
insurance
weeks.
companies that pulled out of California, many of them are going bankrupt. And the ones that didn't pull out that are still there, even though they passed this ridiculous law, the FAIR law or whatever, that says that they have to stay. Well, no, they don't. They have free will. They're a business.
Yes.
They can decide whether or not, they want to leave or not. That's why the whole minimum wage thing is garbage, because you cannot force a company to say, I'm going to make sure that they have to pay X, because the company can say, well, sorry, we don't want to pay X for people that we think are only worth Y. And so therefore we're going to move to a more friendly, location, or we're going to go out of business. And so free will is what, is going to cause a $20 an hour guarantee to be a $0 an hour guarantee. But, with everything being said, I think that we have to also look at what happened here. And I think that there's been a diversion of water. There's been water fights. There's been water barons right? You have the Linda and Stuart Resnick family, multi-billionaires that basically own 57% of California's water supply,
Yeah.
the Kern Water Authority. Back in 1994, there was a secret meeting in which they actually were able to pay with their own money the rights to get a lot of that water, and bought into the Kern Water Authority and gave it to their farm for their company, the wonderful company. They do pistachios.
They're
They
wonderful.
do, yeah, they do the halos or the cuties,
Fiji water,
pomegranate juice.
almonds.
So
Yeah.
yeah, avoid those products if you can, because what you're doing is you're feeding a water baron, basically. And
And a
so, of
liar. So
course,
he made a whole Fiji water line
and the
created
Fiji water line, that's correct.
but he calls it Fiji, and everyone thinks the water comes from Fiji. No, it was
No,
bought and purchased from the people of California.
absolutely.
So
That's
many of these
exactly
people are
true.
just
Yeah.
pure frauds.
They're total frauds, completely. The wonderful company, so they're not so wonderful. So make sure when you see those products, folks, you don't jump on that. And one other thing, as far as the Red Cross is concerned, I would not donate money to the Red Cross.
Ever.
The
No.
Red Cross, basically, if you're lucky, you're going to get 60 to 65 maybe percent of what you've donated to go to its intended cause. And so instead, the rest goes to management and bloated governments, and whatever it is that they want to give it to.
Marketing
Give
partners.
give it to Samaritan Purse. Samaritan Purse is where you want to send money to, because they're a Christian-based faith group organization for donations, and they help a lot of different people. But more importantly, close to 90% of what you donate goes to the cause. The same thing with GoFundMe. GoFundMe is run by leftists that like to censor people. So if you're a conservative and you need to raise money, go to GiveSendGo.com. GiveSendGo. They're a Christian-based fundraising platform, and you're giving your money to a much better organization that's going to be a better steward of that money. So these are just some of the things that people don't know. So I like to point those things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything has a background story, right? So there's dirt on everything. Everyone should understand that. There's no totally clean organization. There's plenty of, rumors around about both of those two groups. I look at factual information. I have a lot of friends in North Carolina that are helping, and I will tell you firsthand, there's a lot of rumors and there's theories about everything. Samaritan's Purse got a bad rap for years, but I can tell you this: they were the only boots on the ground for the first 2 months. There was absolutely no one else in North Carolina. They built 3 FEMA camps. And no one knows how much we spent. We estimate they spent around $100 million on personnel, equipment, and all that good stuff. They did nothing for the people of Western North Carolina.
Nothing. Zero.
Samaritan's Purse was in homes every day, bringing food, bringing medicine, bringing clothing. I probably have about 25 friends that volunteered with them. Every one of them had a great experience. Everyone judged for themselves. I judge people based on actions. And I think that Samaritan's Purse, I've never donated to them. I probably will in the future.
I have. And they're a good organization.
And I think Red Cross, you're wrong on that number. I think less than 10% of the money you donate to them actually goes to the cause that you're in. It's a really, really red taped organization.
Wow.
And what most people don't realize is that the advertisers on some of these platforms, like the big news networks. So you'll note, I still remember when Haiti happened, and I think Bush was on TV, and he said, listen, you could donate money to the you could donate blankets and stuff, but just donate your cash. Just give your cash to the Red Cross. People don't realize those backdoor deals for promotions, those guys get paid for that stuff. Those news networks are getting 20% kickbacks on your donations. We have to find a platform, and I like Samaritan's Purse and GiveSendGo. I've never used any of them, so I don't have any experience. I've donated to some of them, but I've never used them myself. But I know all of them take cuts of everything too. It's a business. They're trying to run a business, and that shouldn't be an issue to people.
Right, but some of them take bigger cuts than others. And
bigger.
That's why I'm saying, Samaritan's Purse doesn't take a huge cut, and the money that you donate, the majority of it goes directly to the cause in which you are donating to. And I think
they prove that
that's important. That's
they're transparent about that. Like, most people don't realize that Amazon, everyone shops on Amazon because I'm gonna reiterate this about 10 times, because you're about the only person I've had on here who says this. Tyranny is imposed through convenience. Surveillance.
I talk about it in the book.
We're going to get into the book next, but everything, surveillance, which creates tyranny, comes from convenience. Oh, you just use it. Look at TikTok right now. We have an app where, listen, I listen to both sides of everything. In fact, I study the opposite side of what I believe more than I study my own. I don't care about echo chambers. I want to be right. I want to have the right stance. And TikTok itself, the other side is, well, there's millions of businesses on there, and they could move to Twitter, right? They could move to something that's probably the design, right? So Silicon Valley's upset that China is getting your data for free, and they want to be able to gather your data and sell it to China themselves and profit. That's really the battle over TikTok, amongst many. But when we look at these things, look at the dependence on America. Well, don't take away that app that steals my privacy on a consistent basis.
Right.
Don't take it away. I need the convenience of watching someone eat a Tide Pod. So
Yeah,
we
exactly. And
have that financially.
that's why I said in this century, tyranny is given up voluntarily
Absolutely.
through these different apps. But you talk about TikTok, and in particular ByteDance, because ByteDance is the parent company of TikTok. And TikTok is exactly that. It's spyware. Maybe there's goofy videos on it and things like that, and there's conservatives on it. I will never be on it while it's being run, owned, and operated by anyone close to the Communist Party of China, the CCP. But I talk about it in the China Syndrome chapter of my book. And TikTok is an issue. TikTok is a problem because all of the people that are on TikTok, when you are on TikTok, the Chinese automatically are taking your information and they're storing it in Beijing, where the servers are located. And so that information that they're getting from you can be used against you, in the future. And I think that's what people need to understand. A perfect example, and I talk about this in the book, Temu, right? You've heard of Temu. It's this new online shopping thing where you can buy something for 75 to 80% less than you can get it anywhere else. Well, why is that? Because they're not paying any labor costs, because everything that comes on TikTok has been made, manufactured, produced, and distributed in the Xinjiang province of northwest China by the Uyghur Muslims. You see, and China's getting smart. Instead of saying made in China, now they have labels that say made in the PRC. And people that don't understand go, oh, PRC, well, that's not China, right? Wrong. It's the People's Republic of China. And so we've got to make sure that we are labeling what is made in China, what is not made in China. I actually talk about it in the book, where I say that we ought to charge these big box stores, and any store in that matter that sells Chinese made goods and services, we ought to have a surplus tax on those items. They ought to be labeled separately in the store as Chinese made products, and say, okay, you can still buy them, but they're going to be 50% more than the rest of them. And what we'll end up doing is, if we can make those products more expensive, it will automatically draw people to buy products made in the United States of America. And if not the USA, then maybe Mexico, maybe Malaysia, Singapore, Taiwan, India, Brazil. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as it is not China, because we don't want to continue to feed the beast. Every single time we buy something from China, we are adding to their military apparatus. We're financing another gun, another bullet, another missile, another tank, another, God forbid, biosafety level 4 Wuhan type of lab. And so we have to get smart and realize that we're financing our own demise by continuing to have this relationship with China. And it's a big problem.
And again, to be fair, to look at both sides of the topic. So China was an issue with TikTok from the moment it came out, right? And Trump tried to get rid of TikTok. And he said specifically for the China threat, no one paid attention to it. Everyone laughed at him. Oh, it's just a mobile app. And then we had Ukraine, and then we had conflict in Palestine, Gaza, Israel. And we've had this barrage of truth. Because listen, 4 years, full disclosure, I have a TikTok account. I actually pay someone to put it on their phone and do it for me. I will not download it on my own phone. Because you kind of have to have it anymore. But, the real problem with TikTok is China. Like, that is the root cause. Like, you don't want to give your enemy data, and all those businesses, TikTok takes a cut. Like, people don't realize Amazon takes 30 to 35% of every product. So you have convenience of Amazon, but you're robbing from these small businesses that you're ordering from. TikTok is the Chinese version of Amazon. So there is that bring money back to America, get it out of the Chinese hands. But I think the real issue with TikTok has been the amount of truth that's being disclosed on that app. That is where things changed, right? No one cared about TikTok when it was just destroying kids, when it was just, oh, walk on these crates. You might break your neck, but you might get 1 million views. I mean, this is the devil in all social media, right? We've all become conscious on views, likes. You and I don't have to worry about that. Like my views, I'll get 900 views on a video in the first few hours, and I wake up in the morning the next day, I have 200. I don't know how that works. It's like the 2018 election.
Yeah, right.
but we have these other issues, right? Like people are seeing war videos. They're seeing truth about many different things. It could be anything ranging from partying in Kiev, right? Like we hear on the news, they're bombing Kiev, and the next day we see videos on TikTok of all these people having dance parties in Ukraine. It could be Palestinian being destroyed, and that ruins a narrative. It could be the Chinese narrative. It could, one of the biggest narratives that broke early on was, the Joe Biden administration. TikTok is where people were putting those videos out about his incompetence, right? Whoever that guy is. But they were putting out these videos saying, how can this be your president? Look at these videos
Right.
that the traditional news wasn't showing. So I think
Right.
TikTok has a deeper agenda. I think TikTok will be Americanized, and I think that it will be controlled here. I think what's going to
I
happen, I
would love
hope,
to see Elon Musk buy it, to be
I
honest.
wouldn't,
I mean,
I
could
don't,
you imagine
no.
the powerful punch that would be with X and also TikTok for freedom of speech in this country? I mean, if he runs it anywhere close to what it is on X, and again, X isn't perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it ever has been. I would love to see that, because what it would do is, not only did we have the narrative buster with X in this election, which helped win this election, but you would now have TikTok and X. You would be able to get an entire new generation of more conservative people, because they've been exposed to freedom of speech on two major platforms. So I think him or Kevin O'Leary or somebody like that, somebody ought to step up, or a group of people, business people, get together and figure out a way to buy TikTok and allow it to be a free speech platform. Believe me, if an American company or organization buys it, I'll be on it. I mean, I could have started
Yeah, I will
rebuilding
too.
my career on it years ago, but the principles and the values that I have, I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to take the cheap way in and the cheap way out. And so that's why I've avoided it.
What a novel attribute you have today, integrity. novel,
Exactly.
novel in media. Now, I'm going to disagree on this, and this is what makes conversations great. I actually do not want Elon Musk to buy TikTok. The only things that I've heard in the last 4 years from the left that I actually agree with, and this is going to be, many people won't like this, we're just going from one billionaire oligarchy ruling class to another. And if we continued, if Musk buys TikTok, which he probably could rally the capital, him and Larry Ellison put together a deal. They bought X. I will say this: I'm a fact guy. Elon Musk has banned more accounts than Jack Dorsey on Twitter. That's a statistical fact at this point. So the banning hasn't stopped. You and I both experienced that with some of our posts, and shadow banning is less noticeable than actual suspensions and banning. I don't want to see
I've had a
Musk
couple
go.
of things taken down. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I'd rather see a pooled resource. I would rather see, and this is an idea no one's put out there. Let's combine some ideas. What if there was a give, send, go for equity purchase, which there are. There's multiple crowdfunding deals. I think Americans should actually all purchase these things, where every American has a shot at buying these platforms. Because if we're going from one monopolistic state to another, and Josh, this is undebatable by anyone, that America is run by monopolies. We have a huge antitrust problem. Look
Yeah,
at
I would agree with
Facebook.
that for sure.
So why would we endorse another one being built? The only things I've agreed with Bernie Sanders on in my entire life is what he said the other day, which everyone laughed at, because he is angry that his oligarchs are no longer in charge. But he is bringing up a very valid fact that every American should explore. Are we owned by an oligarchy? Just because they say different things. Musk was a leftist his whole life.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
So
and
Zuckerberg, all these guys.
I was going to say, we have a lot of people in this cabinet with President Trump, and at least one is bound to be, a traitor or a spy,
100%.
right? I mean, you've got Elon Musk. Let's not forget that when he did buy Twitter and turned it into X, he had 18 investors. Okay. Out of those 18 investors, 3 of them were Chinese.
Yep.
And so I was immediately skeptical when he purchased it because I was thinking, okay, well, if he's got 3 Chinese investors and the other 15 are not Chinese investors, what's going to happen on X when we start talking about the CCP and the virus and, all these different things? Is he going to ban those things, right? Then he brings on Linda Vaccarino from, what was it, NBC Universal.
NBC, yeah.
Yeah, and she's not exactly a stalwart conservative by any stretch, but I will say, at least in my experience, it's been better than it has been. But I do agree with you from that standpoint because look, if you have RFK Jr., who is not a conservative, if you have Tulsi Gabbard, who is not a conservative, if you have Vivek Ramaswamy, who, in my opinion, has gotten better. But again, I'm a little skeptical of him still to this point.
Agreed.
And then, of course, you have Elon Musk. One of those, the odds are that one of them is a saboteur. Which one? We don't know. But I mean, one of them is likely a saboteur. It's just, if you just play the odds, one of them is. And God forbid, if it is Elon Musk, well, then he helped buy the presidency. He helped get himself into a position of power. And who knows what he could do at that point? Maybe he squeezes Trump out. I don't think so. I think he put a lot of his own money in to do this. And I think he's coming from a good position, but you just never know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things about Monday that's super interesting to me is that the guys sitting up on the panel with Trump are going to be Zuckerberg, Musk, Bezos. All these guys were in Bezos censored everything.
These are all
through.
sharks.
These
Every
are all,
single one of them.
And there has to be a penalty to be paid. I hope America doesn't forget these things. If you, especially Zuckerberg,
Exactly.
how many people took a one of these guys in their arm that will get banned for saying, but how many people did that against their own will because they didn't hear the other side of the story? Never forget that period in time. That's where America's going. I think we're looking at I'm euphoric. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel like Monday, I feel like Trump's inauguration is like the bringing down of the Berlin Wall. It really is that kind of moment in America, which leads me into conversations. Like, I know you've been on some shows and been talking recently about, some of your concerns about the inauguration. Talk a little bit about that. Everyone has these different viewpoints, and I love hearing them all.
Yeah, I was on the Dr. Drew show about 2 weeks ago, and we were discussing the inauguration. He was asking me about it, and I told him at the time, this is when it was still going to be outside. I told him that I was very worried. I was very worried about the inauguration. He said, why? I said, well, think about it. You have these Chinese military drones that have been flying around since at least November. You have the spy balloons that were traversing the United States of America throughout 2023, doing reconnaissance and, visual aspects and taking a look at our land and surveying our military installation, all that stuff. And here we have now these drones, and you've got the government saying, everything's cool. Don't worry about it. Everything's fine. But yet Trump is being taken out of the security briefings. Now, whether that's done on purpose or not doesn't matter. Bottom line is what is being done behind the scenes that he doesn't know about. And so I started kind of seeing that, and I said, wait a minute, he should definitely not have his inauguration outside. I think that he ought to get sworn in, and he could do it at 11:59 p.m. on the 19th. As soon as it turns to the 20th, he could do it from Mar-a-Lago. All you need is a Bible, and you don't even need witnesses. There's no guarantees on how many witnesses you need. You need, to just be sworn in. It doesn't have to be the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, although it typically is. But remember, Johnson was sworn in on a plane by a female staffer. So many others were sworn in at people's homes back in the day. So there's no guarantee of who has to be there to swear someone in. So you swear him in, and then he immediately calls for the skies over DC within a 100-mile radius to be completely no planes in the sky, nothing. Whatever's left, you shoot down. And once the skies are clear and clean, then you have your outside inauguration. But thankfully, now they're going to do it indoors. I think that's a hell of a lot safer because I was very worried about what was going to happen if, God forbid, these Chinese drones were going to do some type of operation against President Trump outside. Not only that, like I said on Dr. Drew's show, you would have been able to wipe out the entire cabinet, all of MAGA, right there in one shot if, God forbid, something happened. But here's the thing. James O'Keefe, going back to him again, what a great American patriot and hero he is. He had a whistleblower come forward from Health and Human Services, and they said that in all the years, and they've worked through 3 or 4 other presidencies, they have never had the strange request that was given. And that request was extra paramedics, doctors, surgeons, and nurses for the inauguration. Now, why would that be?
Yeah,
For any
surgeons.
other reason, right? And so from that, I was really amping it up. I was talking to people close to the Trump administration, whatever I could do, saying, hey, go inside. Do not do this outside. So whether it was the weather and they're using that as an excuse or not, I don't care. I feel much better that it's now indoors,
I
and
do too.
hopefully it'll be peaceful without any issues.
And the kind of the company, I'm going to talk about the Chinese drones. But I think that if we look at China, if China were a threat, the vice president of China is going to be at the inauguration. So, I mean, that could be used. Millions of wars have been started by a foreign dignitary in a foreign land, where somebody dies and it's blamed on that
Right.
foreign land. So, I mean, there's that projection that could take place. But you seem very confident in saying that those were Chinese drones. There's many different opinions out there. I happen to believe they were our drones. How are you so confident in saying Chinese drones?
Because the government has been so mum, number one. Number two, the size of these drones. These are not drones that you would find at Best Buy or Radio
Oh, no, no,
Shack.
no. Yeah, some of
These
them
are
are the
the
size of a
size of
Geo
small
Metro.
SUVs. These are
Yeah.
military type of drones. And when they're flying around all over the eastern United States and New Jersey and elsewhere, and these are the types of drones that when people when they saw them, the drones would disappear, or there was an instance where someone was following it in a vehicle and the vehicle started to slow down. Like, that's not going to be the technology that's going to be able to do something like that when you're at, Best Buy or Radio Shack buying a little drone. So these were military grade drones. Were they our
That's
drones?
for
I
sure.
don't think they were.
Yeah.
I think they were more than likely the Chinese, because why would we all of a sudden give the Chinese the benefit of the doubt that it wasn't them when we know for a fact that they traversed the entire United States of America as far back as February of 2023, which I talk about, by the way, in Preserving Liberty, Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent Freedom, available now on Amazon. And I talk about the fact that the Chinese are the biggest, most dangerous existential threat to not just the United States of America, but to all of humanity. They want to rule the world, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to do it through their Belt and Road Initiative and their debt trap diplomacy, which people probably don't even know what that is. But basically, they go into countries, and they've done this to over 138 countries around the world, and they say, look, we'll pay for your bridges, your tunnels, your airports, your train stations, your hospitals, your schools.
Soccer
You
stadium.
just sign this little memorandum of understanding, and when you start making profits, you give us more of that profit. But they know that these countries are impoverished countries. They know they don't have the GDP, they don't have the capital to be able to even create that type of wealth. So what ends up happening? It's called debt trap diplomacy. They build, right, Belt and Road Initiative, belts and road. They build everything, and then they take the country once that country can't pay China back. They've done this to over 138 countries around the world.
So have we.
Yeah, but the way that they're doing it is out of malice. We're not trying to nation build around the world. At least we hope that we're not going to continue to do that. I would certainly agree that the last 4 years have absolutely been nation building, right? I mean, from Afghanistan to Ukraine to Syria to all of these horrific things that have happened. But normally we don't do that. And we need to get back to nationalism, less globalism, and start taking care of things here at home. And
Well,
I
yeah,
think that if we do that, we'll be in better shape.
you're extremely well read, and I would highly advise reading a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The idea of debt trap financing is absolutely an American intelligence agency's concept. We did it in Ecuador, El Salvador, almost everything through Central America, all the way through Iran. Iran was completely run by American debt. So the Chinese are just playing in our own game. And not that I'm a fan. I'm a fan of America only. Like I am a true American first nationalist. Like I don't think we should have our nose in any country. but the thinking that the idea of, other people will call it soccer stadium financing or soccer stadium diplomacy, that's actually an American ritual created by the globalists that run this country. It's not truly an American thing, right? It's our country's been infiltrated since inception,
Oh yeah,
probably,
absolutely. I
right? So,
mean,
but we've been doing this for a very, very long time too, and
yeah, it
that's
all started with Richard Nixon and ping pong diplomacy. I talk about it in the book. That's where we basically, I don't know what's the word I could use, not validated, but we basically said to China, hey, we want to trade with you. We don't care that you're,
yeah.
have human rights abuses and kill your political adversaries. We want money with you. And so we're going to let you come into the World Trade Organization. We're going to kind of bring you out of the third world and into the first world. And I think that was the worst mistake we could have
Oh,
ever
sure.
done
Getting
by
them the
far.
WTO is the worst thing you can do to a foreign adversary, especially a communist
Absolutely, without
who's
a
been
doubt.
communist since Mao. I mean, this isn't a new
Yeah,
communism. This is the longest standing reign of communism in
right,
world history. I agree on
right.
that. One thing I always say I try to peel back on things like it's a very obvious trend. Anything that we don't know that appears to be foreign, this is fundamental. The right always goes to China and the left always goes to Russia, right? Like anything that
Yeah,
happens in this country, it's Russia, Russia, Russia. And we'll say China, China, China. The one thing everyone always agrees on universally is Iran, right? Like both sides
yeah,
will blame Iran because when the drones came out, they said that Iran sent a mothership to the East Coast, right? So undetected, a ship that could carry multiple minivan-sized drones that have broadcast capabilities to look like plasma or that have potentially weapons capabilities. Now, we also have funded to the tune of $400 million in the last 4 years these various American drone companies that are designed for 3D scanning. And, there's a free app. I
correct.
forgot, anyone can go on a free app right now and use satellites to determine, like they could see me sitting in my house from above right now, detecting movement and vibration of the being.
The other
So
thing that I want to point out, and this goes to Iran, not only are there 5 active assassination teams currently trying to get to President Trump to avenge the death of Qasem Soleimani, but more importantly, in June of 2019, over the Straits of Hormuz, there was a drone, an American drone, that was shot down
yes,
by the Iranians, which we were not able to retrieve in time. The Iranians actually did that. They called in their Pakistani and Indian and well, not Indian, Pakistani and other people that were scientists and engineers. They took the wreckage and they reverse engineered our technology. So who's to say that they didn't not just do that, but then enhance the technology?
sure.
All they needed was to see what it was all about. And they said, oh, we get it. And then they reverse engineered that technology and probably improved upon it. So it is possible that they're Chinese and Iranian drones.
Sure.
And
Or
so,
very possible because I've talked to black ops operators that are very good at creating drones for training drills that look like foreign nations for our soldiers. We have no idea. The one thing that we know for sure is there's drones flying over our country and
yeah,
we don't know whose they are. We try to pick a side, and I'm not saying you're wrong or right. I have no idea. I'll admit I have no idea. But if it's over our airspace and it's any foreign nation, it could be Ghana, right? Like they're not going to have drones, but it could be any foreign nation. Our populace, the real problem here is not who the drones belong to. The real problem here is that we still don't know a month later. We have no idea.
exactly. Yeah, and I think Livelsberger mentioned something in one of his notes or something before the Cybertruck incident, and he said that they were Chinese drones, that they were foreign adversary drones. But who knows? He's
Yeah,
not here
but
to talk about it either.
yeah, he's not either, and of course we'll never know. But that situation on the Sean Ryan show was interesting because the next day the guy basically said, Actually, I'm not confident in this story anymore."
Yeah,
Right. So,
yeah.
so
There
one
was
thing
some
that's for
blowback
sure,
from that. You're right.
Josh, is that right now in this country we are living. We were born into enemy territory, right? We live in a psychological operation, and as we get
Mhm.
closer to the inauguration, every single couple of days there's a new psyop, and half of the
Yeah.
country buys into one side, the other one buys into the other. What advice would you give people out there to kind of keep their heads cool?
Yeah, just keep your head on a swivel. Honestly, I mean, if the people are going into Washington, be safe. Know what your surroundings, things like that. And honestly, if you see something or someone that just seems nervous or just doesn't seem as though they're there for the right reasons, say something. Because again, what if, God forbid, it's a suicide bomber? You know what I mean? And they're in the crowd or something. So I don't know. I don't like to think like that. It's sad that we even have to think like that.
Agreed.
But
Yeah.
sadly, we do have to think like that because there are so many foreign and domestic, for that matter, but foreign enemies that that do not want to see this man succeed nor take office. And so let's just hope and pray that we can get through this weekend and get through Monday. He can get sworn in and he can get to the White House and start making America great again. But look, I think that there's a lot of people, and they're not gonna just roll over and just say, okay, you won. That's the end of it, right?
Right.
But I have said this: if he was to fail, it would be because of Republicans. Democrats don't have the numbers to stop us. They don't have it in the Senate.
No.
And they almost have it in the House, but they don't really have it there either. So really the only way that he fails is if the Rhino and the establishment decide not to work with him. This is where Elon Musk can be very effective. He could be President Trump's enforcer. He could be his consigliere, if you will. He could get these folks in a conference room in the House and the Senate, tell them no phones, no press, no nothing, have them sign, basically like an agreement, a pledge, if you will, that you will support President Trump's agenda. And if you don't, I've got the money, the power, and the clout to put you out. And we'll find other people that will do it. So I think that the threat for the Republicans on the House and the Senate to get in line is something that Elon Musk would definitely be able to do. And I'm in favor of that. We have a very short window here to, get this country back on track before, God forbid, any leftists come in and try to change things. Remember, Waltz is from the House, right? You had there was another one that was another person from the House. So there's 2 or 3 special elections that are going to be going on, not to mention the Senate, right? You took Marco Rubio out of the Senate. You put Ashley Moody in. Hopefully she wins her seat. So the margins are so tight that we need an enforcer to say, hey, look, if you don't vote 100% for his agenda, well, then you're going to be facing the end of your career because I've got the money and the clout to put you out. And I hate
agree
to
with
say
that.
it, but that's what we need to do.
It's completely anti-democratic to do that, but at times it needs to be done. Like
in this time, we need to do that. Yeah. And that's what my book is about. It's about all kinds of really interesting solutions.
Walk us through it. Walk us through preserving liberty. Like, so let's say we elect Josh Bernstein president of the United States. How is he going to go about preserving liberty?
Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of these criminal illegal aliens immediately. We've got to stop the carrot. We've got to stop waving the incentive for these people to come here. We've got to finish building and constructing the rest of the border wall. And once we've done that and we've removed a lot of these people, then what we need to do is we need to reverse the Remain in Mexico. And more importantly, we need to get rid of the visa lottery. We need to get rid of wet foot, dry foot, right? Which is birthright citizenship. Just because you have a baby here doesn't mean that you should have automatic citizenship. I mean, I think that's just ridiculous. And I think that they're going to look at doing that. But let's not forget about the northern border either. What about the Swanson section of Vermont, which has the most amount of crossings possible? I would also shut down the Darien Gap. People probably don't even know what that is. The Darien Gap is a jungle, basically, area that people traverse and travel. They go to Colombia, they go into Panama, they go through the jungles of Panama with snakes and, wild animals and child traffickers and sex traffickers and drug mules and all these things.
NGOs handing out rape kits.
If they can get through that and go through Central America and then get into Mexico and then get into the United States, well, then they're supposed to be home free. But a lot of them are getting smart because what they're doing is they're saying, wait a minute, why do we want to risk our lives going through the Darien Gap? Why don't we just fly to Canada and, I don't know, walk over into the United States? And so we need a border wall on the northern side as well as the southern side. So those are some of the solutions. The other things I would do is how are we going to get rid of this debt? There's $36 trillion in debt. If you take the unfunded liabilities and you add that into it, you're talking $211 trillion The worldwide debt is $313 trillion. That means that we're north of 64% of the entire world's debt in the United States. That's not a problem. That's life support for the country. So
Death
there's
sentence.
735 billionaires and there's 24 million millionaires. And every single person, if they had the financial means to pay their fair share towards the national debt, it would be about $267,000 per person. So how do you get the wealthy of us among us to start paying down the national debt? What you do is you offer them a one-time payment towards the national debt for $267,000. And if they do that, then if they do that in lieu of that, they don't have to pay taxes ever again. So what would that do? That would bring in about $6.5 trillion towards the national debt. So then there's another $4.5 trillion that's sitting in offshore accounts. That's American money in offshore accounts. It's in places like Luxembourg. It's in places like Monte Carlo and, you know, the Cayman Islands and all these different places.
Yeah.
Right, Malta. So why not? And the reason is because of our oppressive tax situation.
Absolutely.
We're the second highest in capital gains tax in the world. Denmark being number one, we're number two. So why not do a 90-day moratorium on capital gains taxes and penalties and say, look, all you Americans that are wealthy, that have all this money in offshore accounts outside the United States, no penalties, no nothing, no interest, no nothing for 90 days. Bring all that money back into the United States economy. Let's pay that down towards the debt. And now you've got another 4.5 trillion. So now you have over $10 trillion to pay down on the debt. Now, look, I understand that that's putting, you know, a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound, but we've got to do whatever we can to get ourselves back in fiscal sanity. And so those are some of the things that I talk about. As far as elections are concerned.
Hold on, on the election. So
sure.
Yeah, this is so funny because as you started talking about the millionaires and billionaires, and I was like, this is, where are we going with this? This sounds like communism. But a $267,000 contribution to never pay taxes again is actually a pretty genius idea. It started out bad, Josh. It started out horrible. I was going to kick you off the show because it sounded like some commie stuff. But that's actually a very good idea. The tariff situation in there would actually make that advantageous. Right.
Absolutely.
So you could actually say this 267 could be used to prepay tariffs for their own companies on the way in. There's something
another
there
way to do it. Yeah.
But
that's why two great minds thinking alike can solve a lot of our problems.
Absolutely. No, that's a great idea. The other idea is let's just get rid of taxes altogether.
Yeah.
And because they're not going to the federal debt. I mean, last month it was 68% of all taxes collected went towards interest. It's actually not paying anything down. We have to renegotiate that debt because that debt is a complete illusion. It is a complete illusion. We owe someone money for pushing print on a printing machine. That's the only reason we owe them money.
You know, one of the things, and I don't want to give away too much, but in chapter 9, I talk about, you know, class warfare and how, you know, the 1% versus the 99% and all that. Class warfare is embedded in tax policy. So if you can pull out the tax policy, you can pull out the class warfare. And so what I talk about is, imagine if we went to a 22% consumption only tax. And in lieu of that tax, no property tax, no capital gains tax, no excise tax, gas taxes, you know, income taxes, that all gone. And you have a 22% consumption only tax on the things that you purchase. What would happen is it would be a high enough tax to where it would be able to support the rest of the things, you know, roads, bridges, tunnels, all that good stuff. But you would have more money in your paychecks, and you'd be able to take that money and reinvest it back into the economy, the markets, whatever it may be, and let that money work for you.
And the state level? So 22% because the
22% consumption
feds don't
only.
make roads, and we all know the Federal Reserve doesn't make road. Like, that's a state tax. That's
so the effective tax would be about 15%. You add the 7.65% payroll tax onto that, that comes up to about 22%. It's high enough, but it's fair enough. And what it does is it removes the class action, the class warfare. Right? There's no more 1% versus 99%, because what it does is it doesn't help the poor any more than it helps the rich. and it doesn't hurt the rich any more than it helps the poor. In other words, everybody is equal, but everybody wins because everybody gets to keep more of their money. Those are the types of solutions that are in this book. These are the types of things that I talk about. It's only 150 pages. It's an easy read. And I got Congressman Paul Gosar to do the forward to it because I came up with 10 legislative ideas and an additional 30 solutions. I don't just talk about the issues and the problems. I give you real-time creative solutions on how to fix them.
I think we should all everyone should take a look at that. I'm going to order the book today. I'm going to read through
Please
that.
do.
But I
Please do.
also think we need to introduce you to Ron Paul, because I think that
he would love this book because there's a lot of interesting things in here. Like I'll give you one more thing, and I don't want to give too much away, but the FISA court, right? We've heard of the FISA court. FISA court's been around since the 1970s. Do you know who appoints every judge on the FISA court?
I actually don't know.
It's the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. So in this case, John G. Roberts Jr. He's responsible for appointing all 11 justices. So when President Trump had his spy warrants against him and Carter Page and the rest of them, that was basically allowed to happen because of the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court appointing and picking and choosing those 11 justices. Now, here's the worst part. They have been around since the 1970s. They are rubber stamping our freedoms away. They have a 99% acceptance rate on all spy warrants. They have only denied 12 warrants in their existence. And guess what? The worst part? They answer to absolutely no one. There is zero oversight on the FISA court. So one of my suggestions in the book, Reigning in the FISA court, is at a very minimum, why don't we at least, if we can't eliminate the FISA court altogether, which is what I'd really like to do, but if we can't do that, why not at a very minimum force them to go through and advise and consent of a Senate confirmation? These judges take that ability away from the Chief Justice and give it to the Senate, where they're supposed to be able to go through and look at nominees for courts and things like that, right? That's what they have to do. That's what the Senate does. Yeah. Why not do that for the FISA court if we can't get rid of the FISA court altogether? It's those types of solutions. There's jaw-dropping information in this book. You'll need a yellow highlighter while you're reading it.
We could rename that book Decentralize America, Decentralize the World. That is exactly the point. Like,
it's a textbook on how to do it, including elections, everything. I've come up with all kinds of different things for elections and everything.
Amazing. Well, Josh, this has been awesome. I've had you way over our time together. This has been fantastic. How can people find you online where you're not banned?
Well, you can go to jbushow.com, as you see behind me. That's my website. You can subscribe to my website. I do a show 7 days a week. A lot of things that are not on social media, you'll find in the new releases section. That's the section that's too hot for even social media. You can also, of course, go to Amazon and pick up a copy of Preserving Liberty, Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent Freedom. No BS. The title is exactly what I say it is. And I cover a lot of those types of things. I am available on Rumble and, of course, now on X. I'm trying to rebuild a little bit on X. So it's at Real JBU Show, at Real JBU Show. So thank you so much. Anytime, any topic, and I'd be happy to discuss further with you.
I appreciate it, Josh. Well, yeah, everyone check out that book. Give you a follow. Watch the news. I can't wait. I think you're going to come out with some fire stuff here. I'm excited for the news portion of this on Monday. I'm really excited to see what these 100 executive orders are. Really excited.
I am too. I think it's going to be interesting. And one other thing I'll point out, this book came out October 8th. Okay. And this was not self-published, by the way. This is Skyhorse. This is distributed by Simon & Schuster. So it went through legal. It had to go through all that stuff. But I mean, I use the FBI and CIA emails against them, not just in the subs and in the table of contents. I use it in the pages of the book. I go after Fauci. There's a section that's called Beagles, Monkeys, and Orphans, Oh My, and I talk about the horrific experiments that your taxpayer dollars paid for and things like that. But the bottom line is, this book came out October 8th, so before the election. So I was hoping and praying President Trump was going to win, because what's in this book, if he didn't, I'd have to have 24-hour security just to be able to walk around. But it came out on October 8th. that's significant because I didn't pick that date. The publishing company picked that date. It turned out to be my son's 18th birthday and my late father's birthday. So that
Wow.
came from God.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, God bless you, Josh. We'll all
thank
take a
you.
look at the book. We'll give you a follow, man. We'd love to have you back on, cover some topics in a month or so.
Anytime, any topic. Like I said to Dr. Drew last week, and he was kind of taken back by that. And he said, "Oh, anytime, any topic." Well, I'll have you back on then for sure.
Sounds
So,
good. Let's do it, Josh. I appreciate you, brother.
let's do
God
it.
bless you. God bless this country. Thank you all for coming here today. Everyone, check out the jbushow.com, follow him on X and Rumble, and get a copy of that book. Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless.